Welcome back to the channel. Thank you guys for spending some time with me on this Monday. And let's talk about the bobber stopper, because this is probably one of the most overused terminal tackle items that there is. And it just seems like, to me, we try to put this on our line way too often. Now, if you're not familiar with this, it's called the bobber stopper. It's not used for a bobber. When we use it in bass fishing, it is used to peg a sinker in place. So what you do is you thread your line through there, pull it out onto your line, then put your weight on for a Texas rig, and it's going to keep your weight pegged to your bait. Now, there are instances where I still do use this, but I don't use it nearly as much as everyone else is advocating for, because I feel like it is totally redundant in a lot of situations, and it even will cause a lot of negative aspects as well. I think you lose more fish when you have your weight pegged. If you think about your hook with the weight on there, you have all this extra leverage that is stuck right against your hook when a fish is jumping or pulling or whatever it's doing. You're also not getting as much action as you should. If your bait is just falling on that weight, it's not doing what it should be doing most of the time, and I just feel like there are situations where it shouldn't be used. So I'm going to go into the situations where I use it and the situations where I don't. Now, I only use it basically in two ways. If I'm punching, so anytime I have enough weight on something to go into heavy cover, I am going to use it for punching. So 1.5 ounces, an ounce, even if we're going down to like a 3/4 where you're punching like really sparse grass, then I will peg it, because you want your bait to stay with the weight. And what will happen is your weight will go through the mat and your bait will still be on top of the mat, or be like right under the mat, but it won't be where, and the fish will go down and bite the weight. So very important when you're punching to always use a bobber stopper. Now, if you're also fishing heavy cover, like let's say you're swimming a worm or you have a skinny dipper or something on there, you know, typically when I'm throwing a skinny dipper, it's like a 1/32 or a 1/16 ounce weight, pegging it right there. Because I'm basically making this into a swim jig that is just a little bit more weedless. And the same thing goes for like if I'm swimming a worm, it's the same thing. I want my weight pegged because I'm basically turning this into a swim jig. Just doesn't have a skirt, not an open hook, and everything's more streamlined and connected, and it just comes through cover better. So basically I am just swimming a jig, but it's no longer a jig, it's a Texas rig, but I want everything on the combined unit. Now, what you will find in most YouTube videos are guys telling you you should peg it anytime you're flipping, and I'm totally against that. And I know some of the best flippers, I don't personally know them, but I've heard from some of the best flippers that they never do that. There's no reason to do that. And I will tell you that I have found that you probably get similar amount of bites. I just think you land more fish. But I am going to tell you this. So I was pegging my weight for about 10 years. And then for the last 5 years, I haven't pegged it. And there is a little bit of a learning curve when you get off pegging it. So if you've been pegging it and you're not doing that anymore, here's what you're going to find very soon when you try this. Getting your bait, when you reel your bait back to the boat to make your next pitch or your next cast, a lot of times what will happen is you're not going to grab the weight and the bait. You might just grab the bait. Well, when you go to flip it out there, if it's pegged, it's all one thing. So if you just grab like the appendages and flip it back out there, it's going to be fine. This, when you go to do that, your weight's going to slide up the line and it's going to mess up your flip. So very important when you get into the mode of catching your bait before you start flipping it out there, you got to grab the weight or it's going to mess up your flip. Now, what will also happen is going to feel totally different. And I don't think it's, that's a negative. I think that's a positive. I think you're just feeling more. I think when you muzzle that all into one with the pegging system, you're not feeling as much. When you have it apart, you're feeling some of the weight, you're feeling some of the bait, you're feeling pretty much everything. So that is another thing that will catch you off guard, because it does feel totally different. So if you've been pegging your bait for a while, it's going to feel extremely weird the first time you try this. But I just think the hookup percentage is the most important thing in flipping. And when you have a fish that is wrapped around and you have to go in with your boat, or let's say you're fishing off the bank and it's wrapped in the weeds, if it has that weight and hook, you got to think that there's all that extra leverage. And when they have that, those fish come off. And typically when you set the hook on a flipping fish, or any fish with heavier line, you're gonna make a little bit of a hole in the fish's mouth. So it's not, just a clean incision. It is kind of a larger hole there, and that weight and hook, it pops out so easily. So you're gonna lose a lot of fish that way. And flipping is one of those techniques where if you get 7 or 8 bites a day, you're typically in good shape. Some days you'll only get 5, and landing percentage is one of the most important parts of that technique. So anytime that I'm flipping bushes, docks, any type of cover where I don't have to actually have my bait punch through it, it's just falling through it naturally, I'm not pegging. And that's gonna be, your 1/2 ounce weights, your 3/8, your 5/16, your quarters, your 3/16, unless you get around some type of cover, or where you're maybe, let's say you're in like a little bed or something, you might want to peg it rather in those situations where you're just keeping it in one spot. But if you have that bait naturally moving and doing what it's supposed to be doing, you're going to get more bites, and you want it to be doing that most of the time. So when you think of flipping and pitching, this is a vertical technique. The bait's going up and down, but you also want your bait to fall naturally. Let's say this is your creature bait. Here's the back of it. You don't always want it just to go like this. You sometimes want to just let it naturally fall, almost like that Senko fall, because that's more of a natural fall. Fish may swim up and down, but nothing is ever just falling, straight down like that. So you're catching their attention on that first drop. Then you kind of want your bait to just glide and dangle in there like a Senko, and that's what it's going to do, and you're going to catch more fish that way. So try not pegging your flipping techniques, and then there are times when you should always be pegging it. So you got to keep these in the boat, but you don't want to overuse them. Try that. Good luck to you guys, and I'll see you on the water.